Hey everyone, welcome to PunkCast. My name is William Maxwell. I'm a student of Web3 and the owner of Punk9220. CryptoPunks are 10,000 uniquely generated characters stored permanently on the Ethereum blockchain. No punk is the same. This is a show dedicated to celebrating the punks behind the punk. My hope for this podcast is that we capture the essence of the punk culture, elevate the brand and the individual behind the punk. One last thing. Projects discussed on the show is not financial advice. Crypto and NFTs are a volatile and risky asset class. Please always do your own research. Other than that, let's go. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of PunkCast. Today we're back with Punk6220. He's a super talented punk with two Addys, with frumpy hair and normal beard. In real life, he's a multidisciplinary musician, artist, collector, and curator. Please welcome Edouard to the show. Edouard, bonjour.
Bonjour, Max. Thank you so much for having me.
No, pleasure to have you, mate. So really intrigued about your background. I had a bit of a dig into your profile, and it seems like you're the man that can do everything from coding, art, music, collecting, curating. So I'd love to sort of unpack every single bit of it, but excited to have you on the show. And maybe we could just start simply with, in terms of Edouard, is that a pseudonymous name or is that a reflection of your real name?
Yeah, it's just my first name actually. So maybe
Okay.
I was a bit lazy in finding it. Or actually, it was more about starting from my actual identity and just removing my last name from it to get some amount of identity. I would like to create like an artist version of myself, an artist identity, just to show the artistic side or the creative side, while keeping the possibilities to have other kind of activities on the side.
Understood. So almost like Madonna.
Maybe actually, absolutely, that works. That comparison works.
Also, well, mate, why don't we dig into it? Who
Yeah.
is Edouard? What's your background? What's your backstory? Where did you grow up and what did you study and those things?
Yeah, so actually, I think it will explain a lot of things because, of course, when you read the list of the things, the activities that I'm interested in, it may sound like they're very different, but actually, obviously, it came chronologically over time. It wasn't all of a sudden all of them. And initially, I started by both studying computer science. So basically, I'm an engineer to start with. So which explains why I'm able to code and I'm interested in geeky stuff. And also, obviously, it would explain why very much later on I would be intrigued and interested by NFTs and Web3. But initially, I started as an engineer, and already at the time, in parallel with my studies, I got into electronic music production, and I was in a duo, and we were actually side artists at BMG, which was one of the major companies at the time. But even though it was nice to be distributed, and when I remember one day we turned on the radio and it was our song, so it was kind of fulfilling. And it was part of the French touch, at that time. But on the other hand, it was nothing to make me stop my career to my future career as an engineer, because as you may know, even at the time, it didn't make a lot of money, and even less so to this day. So yes, but it was already a kind of a first venture into the artistic world, and then it will explain things that occurred later. So after that, I worked as an engineer and then a team leader in most of the time in an investment bank, which was also another kind of field. But on the side, I was keeping some creative activities. For instance, I've been having solo exhibitions of plastician photography, which was already kind of my first venture into visual art. It would not be only photography, but the pictures would be very often digitally altered, digitally modified, sometimes to the point of becoming abstract. But at the time, it was still photos that were printed and mounted to be placed on the wall, and so of course there were static images, but that will also be a starting point for me later on when I would come back to visual art. And after that, I made kind of a big switch in my career, and I switched from being an engineer slash, project manager and team leader in an investment bank, and I went to the modern art world or contemporary art world. So I founded a committee, uh, which basically made me an art historian. So even though I hadn't made the studies for that, I uh, I was self-taught, and I became like an art expert. I would make certificates of authenticity. I would write art essays for catalogs. I did a catalog for the MoMA, for instance. I wrote catalog with Nancy Spector, who was a curator, senior curators for the Guggenheim for 25 years. So I did all of that, and but it was for someone else's artworks, of course. But it was still already a first switch to the art world and what people would call, especially in the Web3 space, the traditional art world. So it was really fulfilling as well to be able to organize big exhibitions in international galleries and then even museums, which is something I actually also do currently, which kind of explains why I removed my last name from my artist name so that I would be able to have this activity as the director of a famous art committee. And I didn't want, to mix things because, I didn't want people to have comments like, "Oh, he's using the fame of that artist for his own art," or stuff like that. So I really wanted to start from scratch and gain my own fame, if you will, for my own creative activities. And so 5 years ago, because I was able to delegate more tasks to the galleries that I was working with as the director of the committee, I gained more available time for myself, and I was able to think about coming back to music at first. So at that time, I wanted to be a solo artist because initially I was in a duo. So I was wondering what name should I take, and maybe in the most straightforward way, I chose my first name, which is I mean, on one hand, it really represents me because I'm not hiding. I'm just hiding part of me, but it's still very much me. And I actually used as my avatar my ID photograph that I just modified and painted on Photoshop. But basically, it was my ID photo. So it was kind of a semi anonymous identity, but on the other hand, it made it kind of hard to like it was kind of a challenge because my first name, like many people have it, especially in France, and so in order to be able to be referenced or to be easily found on the internet, you really have to cut through all the noise. But in any case, that was me, so I decided to work with that identity initially as electronic music producer, and then later on when I would say it was like 2 years and a half ago, I entered the Web3 space, or rather the NFT space. I decided to keep that artist name, and I decided to merge the because actually being a visual artist, being an electronic music producer, these are both creative activities. Other artists also that actually I know, like Agoria, do kind of both at the same time using the same name. So I decided to do that. And it was kind of a 50-50 thing between my committee work with my full name, and you can find my LinkedIn profile and see the rest of what I've done in my career, and the second half of my time spent on developing my creative activities. And so, like I would say, in the last two years and a half, I started. I'd really discovered NFTs. I was interested into it, but I don't know for what reason I didn't get into it earlier. Maybe because I was too much into my committee work or into my music work. But I asked someone who I met 10 years earlier, whose name is John Carp. So he's well known in the space. You
Mm.
know, John Carp is
Is a
not
punk,
only
purple
a
hat.
CryptoPunk,
Yeah.
he's a punk, absolutely, but he's also the founder of the co-founder of NFT Factory. He's the founder and of NFC Lisbon. And also he has obviously this podcast in French, NFT Morning. So, and I asked him about NFTs, and at some point, I heard that he opened this gallery that was called, or this space that was called NFT Factory in Paris. So I decided to visit, and that was kind of my first contact there. And actually, before I even set foot over there, I saw that there was a member NFT that you could get. So I decided to open a wallet at that time. And that was the first NFT I got, was the member NFT, which was called the member node of the NFT Factory, because I felt like it was better to have it before I even set foot into the physical space.
Can I just go back a little bit too? I think you've gone through. You sort of summarized your I don't know 20, 30 year career. I mean, you might be 15. I don't know. 10 year career
Yeah,
in sort of 10 minutes or so. But can I just go back to the beginning? When you said you started studying computer science, and computer science, as I understand it, is all math. Very
and
very
logic.
analytical and logic, black and white, right and wrong, binary. Um, what made you decide to study computer science of all the things you could have studied? Like, what was the thinking behind that?
That's a hard question to answer, but I guess that even though initially I didn't really know what I wanted to do, I mean, I think I've got the mind of an engineer, though, because I like to understand how things work, and I like to solve problems, and I'm also kind of a perfectionist, so maybe it works in those ways, and I think it was a good fit. But initially, I had no idea that I wanted to be an engineer, and I was playing video games, and I was thinking, what's the closest thing to video games, to be honest.
I gotcha. What about growing up as well, pre sort of computer science? Were you always artistic? Were you painting? Were you reading books? Like, were you doing anything sort of creative growing up as well?
Yeah, I really wanted to make music, that's for sure. So I don't remember quite clearly what was the proportion of me wanting to impress girls, but I remember I really wanted to do electronic music very early, and I was using the software called Mod Trackers at the time, where you just have 4 columns and you could just enter very short samples, and that was a very early way of making music that was actually used in the demo scene. If people don't know what the demo scene is, at the time, computer was kind of slow, but some coders wanted to really show the use the capacities of the computers in the most optimized way, and really display impressive graphics like 3D graphics, and there was also music that was done for those what were called demos, which was the name of those kind of programs. And I was using the same programs to make music at the time. That's how I met at high school my friend Olivier, who I created this electronic music band with him. So that was kind of my the creative side of my youth. Of course, I was reading books. But I was also really into science and music, I would say. Yeah, and
That's
also
cool.
I was interested in modern art already at the time.
That's cool. In terms of music, I mean, was it sort of like, is your friend Oliver deep into the space? Were you sort of teaching each other? I mean, I guess you came from computer science, so you probably understood tech. And I guess back then you're DJing on computers and stuff like that by that time, right? Or was it still records, the old school records?
I remember we were there maybe because we were obviously very young at the time when we were first signed at BMG. I think we were like no older than 19 or 18, 19 or 20, something, but like kind of young, especially compared to the other artists. And so we were already having using tools that the others were not using. The other, I remember, they were still using like kind of hardware tools in a gear in a studio, a kind of expensive gear. And because we didn't have this money and because we had computers, we would use those cheap software with those very first sound cards, which didn't sound very good at the time, but we really worked to make them sound just professional. I wouldn't say sound good, but just professional enough. And actually, it would also at the time, and that I remember that was even printed in a magazine at the time. And we wanted to, we were able to send our tracks in progress to each other through the modem. At the time, it was we were using modems to connect to the internet. So I think we were kind of ahead of our time, but yeah, it was already kind of a technical thing to do to compose electronic music very much.
It's crazy. How did you get found by BMG? I mean, they're a huge name.
Yeah, yeah. Think that we were first signed in a label called Omnisonus/Apricot Records, and so the name was of the band was the Wiseman. And after that, the very shortly after that, the label was bought by BMG. So actually, we became BMG artists. Yeah, I think that's how it went.
That's super cool. And one last question on your DJ career or electronic production career. Did you actually get any girls?
I'm afraid it didn't work the way I expected. But I made it. I would have to say it worked better later in time, like much later. But at the time, I'm afraid it wasn't sufficient.
Oh man, that's super cool. I just got back from a holiday. I think I was just telling you before. I got back from a holiday
Yeah,
in France, but before that we went to Tomorrowland in Belgium, and David Guetta was, and he's
yeah.
French too, was the closing act, which is sort of a cool sort of vibe and space to sort of be around. Man, I wish I could DJ too, but just not talented. So you moved into investment banking as an engineer and a team leader.
Yeah, yeah.
How did you find that? Like, was it intellectually engaging for you, or was it sort of a bit of a bore for you, given your sort of background leading up to your first career?
No, it was actually a choice. Initially, I started in a random domain, which was like public association and stuff like that. And it wasn't really made for me because I could see that the level, the skills of the engineers was not very high in that field. And I realized that the domain where there was the most that was the most demanding and also the most rewarding in terms of pay was investment bank. So I decided to switch there very quickly, and yeah, that's what I found. I found it to be really. It was difficult on one hand. I can't lie about it, but it was very much less. I mean, it taught me a lot of things that would serve me in other activities, and I don't know, maybe even it helped me when I created the committee because it kind of makes you structured and organized, and you're able to to make decisions. You're able to also lead the team and make. So these are skills that I developed, I would say, the hard way, but are useful for
Yeah.
any kind of
Do,
activity.
do you want to talk about the committee a little bit more? Like, what was the concept and the genesis for why did you start that? And what is it exactly?
Well, the thing is, for the exact reason that I'm not disclosing my last name, I don't want to disclose the identity of the committee. So only the people who know me personally may know about it. But I can answer in a general way, if you don't mind. So I had the opportunity uh, to make a break after working like 8 years for that bank. Because in France you have a very nice system where for the biggest companies, like I think those who have more than 5,000 employees, you can ask for a break. So you're not being paid for like 11 months, and you can actually postpone your return up to 3 years later. So it can have like a 3-year break where they are committed to uh, putting you back in a position with the same pay after that. So it's like if you create a startup company and it fails, you can come back. So it's kind of a safety net. And so I decided maybe I will try to create that committee to defend an artist that I really wanted to defend. And of course, I had to learn everything from scratch. I needed to create the social accounts, to create the website. I needed to to start building archives, and to contact galleries and museums to try to organize exhibitions. And it took a lot of time initially, but I got there after 5 years eventually. And so I didn't need to, because it was succeeding, I didn't need to go back to the bank. And also it's very hard to come back to an office job after you've had the opportunity of, having your own schedule, being your own boss. So of course you don't have weekends because every day is a work day, and of course you don't have a schedule because you can work at night. But on the other hand, you can also decide to wake up at 12, which I may have done today, to tell the truth.
Sounds like a great life. And you mentioned the term an art historian.
Yeah.
Can you describe? I mean, for the newbies and novices like me, specifically, what is the role of an art historian? Like, what do you sort of do?
I would say it is a capacity rather than a role, because being an art historian, you could decide to have any mission that you want, or even to have no mission at all, and to wait that people ask you to write a text or something, or to comment on something. So it doesn't have to be a role, but it's definitely a capacity, I would say, like a hat that you have, a knowledge or a skill. In my case, it's hopefully a skill, but it comes with a mission, because my mission was to defend the artist, and I really wanted to have to organize a retrospective show for this artist who didn't have a retrospective solo show for a long time. So that was my goal. But in very practical terms, it's about organizing the archives. So all the documents, the exhibition catalogs, the letters, all the archives from the artist, and know about it, and know about all the books that were written about the artist, and be able to write new essays, new text about the artist on new subjects, because for very important artists, there are many subjects to explore, and some subjects haven't been explored. So the fact information may be hidden in some archive, in some documents, and just it happens that no one found the time or the interest to connect the dots. And I really feel like to be an art historian, the first level of it could just be to tell the story that has already been told and or discovered or known or written about. But the second level is to kind of connects the dots that are already here, and make elaborate kind of theory, and also make it easier to make kind of summaries to make the artist easier to approach by people who don't know the artist. And the third level is like writing new chapters of that artist's history.
Understood. And the question why I asked that, Edward, is, and maybe I'm just sort of jumping ahead a little bit too, because I want to connect the dots here. Do you think CryptoPunks are old enough for an art historian yet, or do the artists need to be long gone before an art historian
Well, that's a very good
approaches?
question. That's a very good question. And with all very good questions, there's a possible potential debate about it. But my opinion would be that. But maybe I will lay out the different opinion that people could have, because some people could say, it requires a bit of time before you can really get art historians to do their work, because you need to have a kind of a real view, and to see how things settle down before you can make an opinion. But other people, and I would rather actually be on their side, even though I really understand how art history evolves, but it doesn't mean that there should be people commenting what has just happened. And actually, in the world that is going faster and faster, I think that already after several years and more than there's already enough time behind us to already start talking about it, because actually the first who talk about this, the first art historians or art critics who talk about it, will actually influence the ones that arrive later. So I think it's important to actually start talking about art as soon as you have an opinion about it, really. And then, is it art history? Is it being an art critic? Is it just you having an opinion on something? That's maybe for the history to decide what is art history or not, or what opinion is considered to be accepted or authorized. But it doesn't change the fact that you should express your opinion when you have it.
Yeah. Well, I think we should get started on documenting punk history. I think there's so many stories we could sort of pull out already for sure. Super fascinating too, and yeah, love the fact that you sort of have that sort of diversity in your sort of background. And then you're moving back into okay, so then you're moving back into NFTs, and I think your NFT journey started with John Carp,
Yeah,
NFT Lisbon. Your first NFT was
NFT Factory in Paris
NFT
initially.
Factory.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Were you into crypto before then at all, or did you buy crypto and onboard through John Carp and the NFT Factory?
No, I don't know that I could say that I was in crypto. I had bought Ethereum, but it was in the mind of a trader really at the time. So I wouldn't say my mindset was really Web3 at the time. I invested in it a bit, but I I I don't know. I didn't explore fully the Web3 space, and it really started with the NFTs later. So I wouldn't consider that I was in Web3 earlier, even though I owned Ethereum. But you know, all those cycles with the value of, I mean, the market value of the Ethereum, it kind of scared me a bit. And I thought, wow, the trading is not for me. And I'd rather actually be like, for instance, an investor in startup companies. That I think I have more the character for that than being a trader. So that the stress of looking at the curve the whole time, it kind of actually made me leave that space before I returned just for the NFTs. But really for me, and I think we had the occasion of getting more into that. But for me, NFTs were really about not only the technological solution, but also really about art. Really, even more than collectibles.
I mean, coming from the trad art space, was it an easy concept for you to pick up when John Carp was talking about, you know, JPEGs on the blockchain? Was it easy for you to sort of jump on and get behind from given your sort of background, or did it take a little bit of time for you to digest?
The thing is, I didn't even get exposed to all this talk about it until I actually set foot in the physical space that was NFT Factory in Paris. So I really had no expectation, you know. I understood, of course, before I did that. I mean, I was kind of very intense about it because I went from knowing nothing about the subject, it was the end of November 2022, knowing nothing about the subject, and because I decided I would go to NFT Factory before I got a cab and went there. I decided I would get a wallet, but I will also spend 3 full days learning about the blockchain and even how to develop in Solidity a smart contract because I felt like I needed to understand everything because before I could step into it. That's maybe the way I function. I don't know. So you know, I knew nothing about it, and then 3 days later, I understood everything about not everything, but like a lot about it. And I even entered the gallery, having already the member NFT and even or having already a PFP. But then I got the first impression of actually what were NFTs when and I think I think that's why I consider it very important in the future also that there are physical spaces for NFTs because the way I was exposed to NFTs for the first time, apart from buying two NFTs before you know stepping in the gallery, but it was really I saw them in a physical frame, and it was actually what made me connect to them. Well, obviously the artworks, right? And obviously, if you can consider that a work like an image, a still image can be art, then why should it stop being art if it stops moving, if it starts moving, or if it's just slightly animated, or if it's just being displayed on the screen? Because actually, the initial the source material is digital to start with, so it makes sense to display it on a screen rather than print it, which has a lesser color spectrum and so it really made sense because it was presented as an artwork. And that's where I actually bought my first artwork from Louis-Paul Caron. And I thought, you know, it's very playful. You can just scan a QR code and you can buy it. And oh my God, this artist, you know, he's studied in a fine art school. He's an actual artist. And so I was really not introduced to it in the shape of crypto art or digital art or collectibles, but really I already felt immediately the potential for artists in the most general sense to be able to sell in a standardized way in a liquid way, I would say, to make to have a market and sell the digital art, because there's no reason why digital art should be lesser of an art.
Gotcha. Just so I understand as well, what year was this? Was this like 21 when you
2022,
first
2022, the end of
2022?
2022. So I had no idea that I missed the big, the summer of JPEGs and all of that stuff. I really arrived as a, a newbie, but it was fine because I learned progressively. And maybe if I had heard of all of these, it would have scared me away, you know. And actually, I think being very naive about it initially really helped me adhere to the concept and really make me want to be a proponent and a defender of that space, really. But I really always had in mind that it needed to be connected to the more traditional art world, to be recognized, to be open to more traditional collectors, to give a bit more air and space for those artists, and so that they don't only depend on the bull cycles.
Gotcha. And you mentioned at the time you found out about PFPs and you needed a PFP. What were you
Yeah.
using at the time? Did you have your Punk?
No,
then?
that was really the second NFT that I bought. So at the time, I only had like one ETH. So I got the member node from NFT Factory, and then right after that, I found what was the name? You know, the 3D Invisible Friends 3D. Yeah, it was an Invisible Friend because I found it nice, and you know, and it was the only one I could afford at the time, considering the small amount of money I had put in there. So you know.
They were nice aesthetic. So when did you learn about CryptoPunks?
I don't remember the exact moment, but I know that I obviously had heard about it as being the most elite collection of NFTs, obviously, and I kind of knew they were very pricey at the time, so they were kind of something that was not in my plans and to acquire. But then there was in mid 2023 there was an event at I Am Gallery. You know, I Am Gallery was a gallery that was actually the curator was Grida, and the space closed earlier this year. And actually, I made the last exhibition with my friend Bouyasan at EM Gallery. And EM Gallery was actually chronologically the second physical NFT gallery in the world after Superchief. And so at EM Gallery, there in Paris, there was an event organized around CryptoPunks, and three French CryptoPunks came to talk about it. And so there was John Carp, obviously. There was Gwendal, who was already a friend of mine, and there was Gaspard, also who works for Ledger. And those three CryptoPunks told the story of the CryptoPunks that I didn't know about, you know, the V1, V2 thing, and how it was supposed to be a community, and how it was a very specific, a very special community, very different because there wasn't the commercial aspects of other collectible collections, and actually, like you know, I could talk about Bored Apes, for instance. And so it was different because initially it was released for free as an experiment, and which really sounds like really much art and generative, and like the first generative art NFT that actually became the template for what would become NFTs and ERC 721. And so it was very much an artistic collection to start with. And besides, I really understood it was also kind of a private club, like the kind of the most elite private club, I would say, of the Web3 space, which was something that got me interested because at the time I was really interested into as many private clubs as I could, which I'm still a member of a few private clubs in Paris, in like Los Angeles, and so I thought, wow, it's very interesting, and I also very much liked what they said, what they explained about it, which I very much agree with, and I very much defend today, which is the fact that in other collections, you know, you expect from things from the collection owner. You're like it's a brand or it's a company. They made promises. They talk about rewards. There's a Discord and stuff like that, and so you expect something in return. And with CryptoPunks, you don't expect anything in return. You have to create your own value. You have to bring something to the community before expecting something back in return. And I really love the thing. That's the only NFT community that has that, I think. And you can meet because obviously there's a networking aspect to it, and you can meet great people who actually are builders with very different profiles. So it's very varied. And some people, they are more on the finance or crypto side. Some people they are more in the NFTs collectible sides, and some people they have made their own NFT collection. And you don't have too many people in art, but you have some people in art. And you have quite a lot of collectors and quite a lot of artists. And because I think maybe we're going to talk about that, there's currently a great exhibition curated by Chuli at the Francisco Carolinum Museum in Linz, in Austria, about the art of CryptoPunks, the art of punk, it's called. So you can meet a lot of different people, and these are all builders. They are doing things before they expect things from the community. So really, that decided me. I went after that talk after that panel. I went to talk, I think, to John and Gwendal, and I told them the very same day, I'm gonna get a CryptoPunks. And I think like 3 days later, I had mine. That's how it went.
Amazing. So John and Gwendal, Gwendal's
Yeah,
an absolute legend too, by the way. Such
yeah,
a
yeah,
such
yeah.
a great soul, and a great builder. Um, so Punk6220, frumpy hair, normal beard. What was your thought process around traits? Were you just eyeing something like this, or does this guy actually look like you? Like, how are you thinking about traits?
Yeah, very. I mean, I was kind of lucky. I understand now that because I wanted to act quickly, I want to get mine quickly. One was already on sale that interested me, and I felt that it needed to look like me more or like at least a bit. And I wanted it to have obviously the frumpy hair. That's what I have. The light skin. That's what I have and a beard, a normal beard. I mean, I kind of high. I'm like usually I have this kind of not unshaved look. So yeah, it really I felt it had a clean look, and I wanted it. And I felt, and usually it's a matter of personal taste, really. So in my case, I know that I would feel better with a clean looked funk. And I understand it may sound like opposite, but I felt it represented me well because sometimes people would see me dressed as a coming from my bank as dressed as a banker or dressing very classically, and they would be surprised that I actually make electronic music or that I'm an artist, a photographer, and so on. So that's just the way I am, and actually I think that you can be quite punk in your accents. Because being punk, what is being punk actually right now? And I think it's taking the initiative and not waiting that people tell you what to do, and you can do that while having a clean look. So hopefully that's my take on why I chose that punk, and I think it looks like me, and people tell me that when I present them with it. So yeah,
Is cool. I think the frumpy hair does it right. I think it probably links up. I don't know. The frumpy hair sort of has like a 90s, 80s electro feel that fits in with your music too. I think.
yes, oh yes, exactly. That's so so much my style. Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful punk. Well done on that one.
thank you.
Um, and if money was an issue for you, what would be your dream punk?
Oh, I feel like answering that question may be a kind of betrayal towards my current punk.
That's okay. We won't
So,
tell him.
uh, but I would have to say with the VR goggle, uh, probably, yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah,
VRs are super cool.
because I'm very much into VR. I have like lots of VR helmets at home, like maybe 5 of them, including the Vision Pro. So yeah, I would say that. Yeah, definitely.
Oh man, yeah. So you're pretty much spot on. I think one of my favorite ones is I don't know if you've seen it. Sov I've had on the PunkCast before, but he's got a beautiful collection of punks. If you haven't seen it, definitely check out his collection. But he's got one that I got put onto by Noah. Basically, it's the Wild White with the VR. It is one of the cleanest punks you'll ever find. Just a really
Oh,
great combination, beautiful combination. The Wild White and the VR.
yeah,
Um,
maybe seen in some other life. We shall we shall see. But in any case, I have to make I have to work to make my punk memorable. And even initially, I didn't even disclose that I had this punk because I only disclosed it like a month ago. So that was something particular, and some people around me were a bit surprised. Like I know obviously a lot of artists in the space, and they were kind of surprised that first of all they didn't all know that I had a punk because I really didn't disclose that very much. I feel like I didn't want the maybe the attention initially. It's kind of the same way that I didn't want to use my last name and my actual my parallel job, if you want, to help me in my artist career. I didn't also want to maybe initially the punk to kind of bring a bias to the way I would be perceived as an artist, also as a digital artist. So initially, I kept it a secret. Even though some people told me you should have told that to space earlier. So I don't know.
Why do you think? Do you think it would have been an advantage or disadvantage for you to tell
That's
them
what people
earlier?
tell me. That's what people tell me, and also that's what I felt in a way. But I didn't want to have this advantage to start with. It was already nice enough to be able to attend those events, to go to that Beeple event last year in September, and to meet a lot of great people. But obviously, I would have it would have attracted a lot more attention on CryptoX, for instance. Uh, but I really waited until I couldn't, and because also I wanted to reveal it in a way that wasn't just about a CryptoPunk. It sounded a bit silly to me, and I felt it needed to be something associated with art. So, like for instance, I would release a collection related to CryptoPunk or something like that. And actually, the exhibition at Linz, curated by Chuli, offered me that because I mean it was very much art related because for the first time my artwork would be exhibited not only in the gallery but in a museum. So I'm very grateful for that. But also, it was an art of punk exhibition, so it made no reason why I would exhibit there if I was not a punk. So I needed to really admit that I was a punk, and which is why at the time a month ago I switched my profile picture to my punk.
Uh, Julie did such an amazing job. That how was the
Yeah,
whole event? Unfortunately I couldn't make it over, but it looked like
so great,
a
such a
amazing
great,
turnout and really well
yeah,
curated. And she did such an amazing job. But yeah,
yeah, such a great show. There are two exhibitions in parallel. There is the Justin Aversano solo show as well on the other aisle of the museum, which is great. He's also a friend and a punk, obviously. And on the other side, you have this Art of Punk show that Truly curated, and it's really great because it shows that first of all you have great builders and great artists within that space, and some very well known, obviously, like Beeple, but some lesser known, or and they have all had different techniques because some of them, they do digital art, but some of them do also physical art, and I was really amazed by some of the artworks there, and I met also a few punk artists in person that I only knew online before. So, and honestly, I would have to recommend everyone to go there. And by the way, if you really cannot make it to Austria, there's also a part of the exhibition that's in the metaverse, which is in Voxel, in crypto voxels. And so you can visit other artworks, but they're not the same artworks as the one shown, obviously, in the physical space. And actually, I'm part of both spaces. But it's a really great exhibition, and I think it will make history because it's kind of a second step on the way to inclusion into artistry. I think of the CryptoPunks. Initially, for the art itself, I feel it was like last year when it was entered Centre Pompidou's collection, and it was shown in the permanent collection at the fourth floor for 6 months. And kind of the second step is to provide recognition for the community itself. And I think that's what this exhibition does. And I'm very glad to know that Jolly is working on the catalog, because you need to have an exhibition catalog to really cement the existence of this historical exhibition. Yeah.
amazing. And Edward, I mean, like you come from the trad art world, curating, documenting art history. In your eyes, would you classify CryptoPunks as art?
Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind about it. Um, because even though it was, Matt and John, for them it was, and I understand they were game designers to start with, but they were also creatives and visual creators, and it was kind of an experiment for them. They were experimenting with Ethereum, but an experiment can be an artwork, and actually they were the first to do this generative art collection that will start such a big trend on Ethereum. So um, I think it really has all the characteristics of an artwork, not only because of what it was initially, but also because of what it inspired and what it became, and what people made of it, and how it became even a subcultures with so many derivative collections. And I really don't see how it could not be considered an artistic endeavor, especially since at first they were free to claim.
Mm. What do you think the trad art world sort of thinks about CryptoPunks or NFTs in general? Do you think they'll eventually come, or do you find like it's not
Yeah.
interesting for them? Or
I mean, I hope that time will make its work. Uh, um, Something I've done, but even beyond, CryptoPunks, but just for digital art on NFTs in general, something I tried to do very much was to kind of use, the tools I know, my skills in trad art, that, for instance, the two exhibition I did at NFT factories in 2023 and 2024. I wrote a catalog for that because I know it's important to have a printed catalog, and I wrote about the artworks, even though the artists sometimes themselves, they don't necessarily know or want to write about the artwork. So I tried to use those tools to bring traditional art world people to those exhibitions. For instance, I invited the senior curator for digital art of Centre Pompidou, and he was just 100 meters from her office, and yet she didn't come. So, and I think it would have been actually her job to be curious about it and to just come have a look at it. And I felt it was very difficult to make that connection. And obviously, on my own, I'm really not enough to make this work. But I really think there would be a big advantage for everyone if we manage to have a connection and to get a recognition from the traditional art world and from collectors. And for instance, I asked the person who was handling, I think, the sales at, I think it was at Sotheby's, and I asked, when there are digital art sales, are these the same collectors as the other, like, modern art, contemporary art auctions? And they said no. So it's very much divided right now, and basically most of the collectors, like the enormous majority of the collectors of digital art or NFTs, they are like people like crypto holders, crypto billionaires, people like that. They're not traditional art collectors. Maybe it's a generation thing. Maybe it will come with time when the younger generation become collectors again, because they will be more used not only to they will be less scared of the technological gap, because there is some amount of friction there, but also they will be more accustomed to the digital aesthetic that you often find in digital art, because they grew up at later in time. So right now, I feel we don't get really an expression, and it also is the case for, unfortunately, for CryptoPunks. We don't get the recognition yet that we deserve to have, but I think it will come in time. But I'm afraid it will be 15 years or so.
I'm going to be bag holding and permanent community members for 15 years. I'm okay with that. No, it's just no, that's very insightful. Thank you for that, Edward. I think it's just a good reality check, and I think I think the punks that are still here right now, holding and just hanging out and vibing in the community, are here organically and authentically
Yeah,
because they want to be, not because they have to be. And I think
yeah,
that
yeah,
makes
yeah, yeah,
punks very, very
absolutely.
special.
And I think also we need to show a good face to the outside world. That's something I'm very aware of. And sometimes, people they hear about the bad news and all, and what is in the news is like, like there are less than 4,000 NFT collectors, active collectors in the world, or stuff like that. So it's only about bad news, or like they hear about scams and stuff like that. So I really need that we really need to show a good face, and it comes with building innovative and quality projects, which is something that CryptoPunks are very good at.
Yes, 100%. Who's your favorite punk personality in the community?
You do realize I cannot give a name, because then I'm going to have 80 CryptoPunks pissed off at me. But I can name a few, that I know, that I
Just,
appreciate.
just name a
So
few.
no, but I name a few. So I already obviously talked about John Carp, Gwendol, Gaspar, Dan Polko. Of course, we was nice enough to commission to do a portrait of this punk, actually, which was interesting, because how do you do a portrait of something that's already a digital portrait? And so, like, I introduced the idea of pixel field, which was to really bring out the materiality of the pixel. So I made a version of his famous punk. And truly, of course, of course, I know Rainer Horsch, photographer from LA. He actually made a portrait photo of me. Justin Amerstano, I mentioned. Simon Close from LA. He's a great punk. I know Shock. I know Pravision. I know. I don't know if I mean, sometimes you don't know if you should disclose the people's names. So I will just say his nickname, because I don't know if it's public or not. But he has his Twitter account, so it's Shbila, so it's CH but he's French, and so I don't know how public he is. So I'm gonna stop there. But I know he works in finance and stuff. So, and we already met a few times. Valko, of course, I know. Kevin Abosch, as an artist. Gordon Berger, who I met in Linz. Piv, who I met in Linz. So every time there's a new event where you can meet punks, you meet a few new punks, and it's really great to to really see people, and Dutch Tie as well. Actually, I like his connection. Actually, Dutch Tie didn't want to give me his first name, so he asked me to call him Dutch, which I found funny. But anyway, it's fine. And so yeah, it's great to have these people who are really not only all very interesting and very different, but they're all very helpful. You can ask them for something, and they're all like friends by default. That's really kind of an amazing thing. You can count on them. Like, for instance, Dutch Tide, he arrived, but he didn't have a place he couldn't check in at his hotel. So I said, come to my room. You can leave your stuff there. We haven't even met before.
Mm.
Or like Simon gave me and Chuck as well. They helped me because I needed an extra sponsor for Soho House.
Yeah,
So it
amazing.
was instant. So it's amazing. Yeah. And I had been waiting for a second sponsor for 5 years, and I just thought, oh, maybe I'm going to ask on one of those WhatsApp private groups, and immediately I had 3 sponsors. I had too many sponsors all of a sudden. So that was crazy. So but lots of great people, and very people very knowledgeable about the Web3 space, and they all have a vision, which is really great. That to meet people with a vision, people who are not just passive but also very active in their field. Yeah,
Amazing lineup of names and punk that you've mentioned there. And if you could describe punk culture in a few words, how would you describe that to you?
it's very much what I brushed on earlier, which is uh, uh, you know uh, take the initiative, get things done. Don't expect something, and do your own stuff. I would have to say, do your own stuff.
Oh, awesome. And this might get a little bit controversial now, but how do you feel V1 punks about V1 punks? I think you touched on them just briefly.
It's become kind of a fake controversial thing, I feel. I mean, I hope it's become a fake controversial thing, because I hope that people can talk about it without getting mad, because it's kind of that's like what would be a bit more controversial, though, would be the idea that since CryptoPunks are very different, in the private Discord and the private Telegram groups. I talked about WhatsApp, but actually it's Telegram group. Sorry about that. And it's people are different, may have different opinions on things, and I always hope that there's no argument, because I feel we need to be always, very positive and friendly to each other, and try, to just accept that other people have other opinions. So I've noticed that people did not take it so badly when some people were rooting for V1 and others were not. I'm definitely, I mean, I'm not rooting for V1 at all, but I would not want that issue to be controversial. I think it adds to the story of CryptoPunks. And, I really hope that the CryptoPunk community, as diverse as it is, does not get torn over any kind of issue, even less an issue of V1 versus V2.
Well said. And you came in a little bit late in 22, but
Yeah.
But how do you feel about the Yuga acquisition?
I mean, first of all, I'd like to say I really like Atty, Stone. So she's handling the CryptoPunks collection for Yuga Labs. So she's really
amazing.
friendly, and I really and I like her very much. Obviously, when we got that news, and actually when it was already made when they had the talk in Paris that convinced me to get the CryptoPunk. It was already made, the acquisition, I think. I remember they talked about it, and what they said was that, I mean, John Carp and Gwendol, Gaspar, what they said was like, we can very much expect them to not touch the collection and should just keep things as they are, because CryptoPunks, they're doing their own thing, and they don't want people to tell them what to do or whatever. They are driving their own community. And so I really agree with that. And I really feel, as I've already said to Stone, that the thing that Yuga can do to help is to really push the recognition by institutions and museums, by gifting, donating a CryptoPunk to an important museum, like they did, with I think with LACMA, with Centre Pompidou. So I think that's where they can help to do this kind of institutional recognition actions. But apart from that, I think they should leave CryptoPunks in kind of independent, because that's kind of the spirit of that community.
Well said.
But obviously, I mean, they can do whatever they want,
See, that wasn't so bad, Edward. That was well said.
No, I mean, yeah, I can be quite political if I want to be. No, but no, besides, I'm kind of glad because, for instance, even though they were not the initiators of the Art of Punk exhibition, so that's really thanks to Chile, but I know they will be helping with some, with the catalog, for instance, which is very nice. I would expect them to help in those kind of actions, But if they launch projects, it's really their own project, and it doesn't necessarily represent the whole CryptoPunks community, because actually no one can speak for the CryptoPunk community, which is why it's so special. Everyone is their own CryptoPunk, and it's the way it is.
We are very diverse. We all love CryptoPunks. That's the only thing that we can align on. But other than that, I think everyone's got differing views. So I guess last question for PunkCast. If you can pass on a message to the next owner of your punk, 6220, what would you like to say to them?
Obviously, I was expecting the question. It didn't mean that I had an easy answer to it, simply because I don't like thinking about that, because I have to think it's either I would have to be in a very bad situation that I would feel like I need to sell my CryptoPunk, or I would be dying or something. And but if it happens, and I would hope that I would have by that time I would have given there would have been a story to that punk already. There would have been things made by that CryptoPunk. So I would hope that they kind of continue to steer it in the same direction of initiative and something related to art. Obviously, that's something that I can hope for, or maybe even better, they can just archive the CryptoPunk and keep it as a memory of the things associated to it. But really, it doesn't really matter because it's gonna if it gets transferred in some way, the person's going to do whatever they want. But on the other hand, it really asks the question of actually something that people haven't talked too much about. But most of the NFT collections, I'm not sure they're going to be transmitted or inherited or something. I'm not sure about it yet, but it's like not a subject right now. And I feel like most of the NFTs are going to be stuck in the wallet forever, like frozen. And I'm not sure if that's a bad thing actually. I mean, for the artworks, I would prefer that they continue to move from collection to collection. But on the other hand, for an NFT like a CryptoPunk that holds a personality, there's a personality linked to it. I feel like it's not too bad if it stays frozen in the forever in the lost in a wallet with the lost access to it. You know, so in a way, it kind of prevents someone else from ruining the story or reputation of a CryptoPunk or something. So it's a very interesting question, actually. I think it's very deep.
And your lore as an art historian and DJ can live on forever in that instance.
Hopefully, yeah. Actually, maybe I should do that. Maybe I should make sure that all my NFT collection of artworks gets transmitted, because it absolutely needs to live on. And so because the artworks need to move from hand to hand the same way physical artworks do, so that they can be shown and presented and talked about. But I think for the very specific case of the CryptoPunk, I think it's better to remaining frozen or in the safety of like if I had a child or something, maybe, but apart from that, maybe it's better remaining frozen. Yeah.
Remain frozen, and this will be the only oral history of of Punk 6220 on record, which will be kind of cool.
Yeah, I hope so.
Edward, this was super fun, man. So nice to finally connect and hear your story, and I just love hearing stories such as yourself. From a different part of the world, a different upbringing, and different background, and it's just great to see this kind of diversity within the punk community. So thank you for joining PunkCast. Any sort of final closing comments on your behalf, and what's the best way for people to find you?
So first of all, thank you so much for having me. And I think it's great that you can show through your podcast the diversity of the punks. And people can find me quite easily on Twitter. It's Edouard Music. On Instagram, it's Edouard and EDOUARD. And on the web, it's edouard.com, quite easily.
Perfect. Guys, that wraps up an episode for PunkCast for the week, and we'll be back next week with another punk. Bye for now.